I'm going to talk about our radios. The first thing I want to do is talk about how the repeater works and how it functions in relationship to what we used to do. Then talk about most of the buttons on our handheld radios, how to set them, what the best way to have your radio set up is depending on what you're doing. And then just right now, just 3 things to talk about as far as using the handheld radios. So let's jump into how the repeater functions. We're going to be on CERT 1, and this is what we call simplex. We're just going direct from one radio to another. So we have Carmel Team 1 and over here Carmel Team 2. So Team 1's calling Team 2. Team 2, this is Team 1. And I want you to take a look and notice the frequency that we're actually broadcasting on. The radio is automatically set up to do this. Now, when we go back the other direction, this is Team 2 talking to Team 1. Notice that the 2 frequencies are the same. So that's simplex. That's talking radio to radio, exactly the same frequency. So that's what we call simplex. Now let's talk about what the repeater is doing. Okay, this was CERT 1, CERT 2, CERT 3, work the same way. It's just a different frequency. It's the only difference between CERT 1, 2, and 3. All right, now we're going to be talking from Monterey to Pacific Grove. We know radio waves won't go through that mountain. So up on the top of a water tank in Seaside, we have our CERT repeater. But here's what happens. Monterey is going to be calling Pacific Grove. So PG, this is Monterey. Right, notice the frequency right here. Now, what the repeater does, it takes this signal, it will change the frequency. Notice this was 460 megahertz. This one is 465. So it changes the frequency and retransmits usually at a higher power. So you'll be able to receive it much better coming from the repeater than you could directly from the radio over here in Monterey. So again, it sends it up here, the repeater receives it, changes the frequency, amplifies the signal, and sends it down here to Pacific Grove. When we programmed the radios, we programmed them so when we're on CERT 4, they will transmit on this frequency, and our radios will receive on this frequency. Now, if we go back the other way, note that the frequencies will switch. So now when Pacific Grove transmits to the repeater, it's transmitting on this 465 megahertz. Again, the repeater receives that, changes the frequency, and retransmits back to Monterey. So the difference here between the simplex and our duplex, we've got this repeater. We have a change in frequency, and one of the big pluses is that repeater up there amplifies the signal, so you get a much stronger signal coming to your radio. So that's the repeater. We also have CERT 5, which is a simplex setup. So now we're back to Carmel. Notice this frequency. This is the output frequency of the repeater. So anybody that's on either channel 4 or channel 5 will be able to pick up your transmission if you're transmitting on the output of the repeater. And again, if Carmel Team 2 is replying, they're on the same frequency. So again, it's that simplex where you get the same frequency, direct radio to radio. It's just that we are talking on the output of the repeater. This might have come in handy when we had our drill at the seashore the other day. We were having problems with the repeater in some cases, we could have gone to CERT channel 5 and had better communications to simplex, but still been able to monitor the repeater if need be. So that's something to keep in your back pocket if you ever think we're going to need something like that. That's what CERT 5 is. All right, are there any questions about the difference between our repeater and the direct communications? Either unmute and talk up or put something in the chat and Sherm can bring it up. Anything there, Sherm?
No, nothing's coming up on the chat yet. But Greg, what you might mention is that on CERT 5, because you're transmitting radio to radio, you're limited by the output power and the range of the handheld or whatever that's talking. So obviously the range won't be as good. It will be almost line of sight rather than broadcasting in the same realm that you would have coming out of the repeater.
Right. CERT 5 is really the same, exactly the same as CERT 1, 2, 3, CERT, those 3 channels. So right. Again, you're going to be limited.
Okay. Jim asked, what is the output power of the repeater?
I don't know. Let's see if Thor can let us know on that one. I'm sure it's at least, I'm sure it's probably close to 50 watts, I would guess.
And Aletha asked, please clarify what you mean by talking on output of repeater.
Okay, let me back up here. All right, so again, when, let's say Pacific Grove is talking to Monterey, this is the input from whoever's initiating the communications, whoever's talking. This is the input signal to the repeater. The output of the repeater is this lower frequency, the shifted frequency that goes to everybody else that's receiving it. So when I talk about the output of the repeater, the output frequency of the repeater, that's this one right here. That's the output that the repeater is on, or excuse me, the frequency that the repeater is on.
Right, and that coincides with CERT 5.
Correct.
Yes. Okay, so, and Thor commented the repeater has 100 watts output.
Okay, so get pretty good range out of that. Any other questions?
Sarah asks, during an incident, what instructions can we expect about what channel we use?
That's going to depend on the incident. As usual, you want to make sure before you leave your group, before you get your assignment, before you head out, make sure you know what channel you're supposed to be on and test as you're heading out. That's all I can say at this point. There's nothing firm. It's going to depend on the situation. Okay. Let's talk about buttons on the radios. This is the newer one, the 3X Pro that we've been getting lately. We do have the 16 channel one. I'll try to list some differences. The button up here on the top, the outside button, is your on off and volume switch. That's the same on both radios. For the newer radio, this SD button, the green button, is what we use for determining whether or not we're listening to 1 or 2 channels, the SD single or double channel. This is everybody's friend, this lock button down here on the newer radios. And I'll talk about this button a little bit more as we go along. We can only transmit on 1 channel. That's going to be the active channel. So this AB button will determine which channel is the active channel. And then back up here at the top, I think I mentioned already, this is the channel knob. This is the same on both radios. The older one, 16 channels, that middle knob is also the channel knob. All right, going over to the left side of the radio as you're looking at it. On the back side of the radio, you've got this battery release button. There's one on the opposite side. I just happen to have a radio with me. You grab hold of both of those buttons, pull them down toward the bottom of the radio, and then pull the back out. I've just disconnected the battery from the radio. You do have some little tabs across the bottom of the battery. Put the back in. Just put those tabs in the little slots at the bottom of your radio. Go up toward the top and squeeze it. I don't know if you heard that little click or not. That was the latch snapping in the back end as the battery connected in there. So I'm back in business. So those are that's the battery release button up here. Again, one on either side. And you've got this long button. It has the 4 little knobs on it. That's the one you want to push to talk. Again, push to talk and release it to listen. If you have the radio unlocked and you want to scan all the frequencies that we have set up in there to scan, it just goes through, it repeats, it'll be listening. If it comes across a channel that's active, it will stop there for a few seconds so you can hear what's there, and then it will continue scanning. It just keeps going round and round. But again, you can only turn that on if the radio is unlocked. And then the last button down there, the bottom one, is the light button. There's a little light up here on the top of the radio. So if you turn on the press light button, light comes on up here, a little white light. Press it again, turns it off. Those are really the only buttons on this radio you need to worry about. Don't worry about the menu or these up-down buttons. All right, now let's talk about the lock feature. So right now, this radio is unlocked. And how can I tell? If you look down in the lower right-hand corner, there's nothing showing in the window. If I push and hold this button right here, the lock button, for about 3 seconds, it will lock. Let me turn this radio on.
Channel mode 4.
Okay, I'm going to push the lock button and you'll be able to hear it say locked.
Lock.
Okay, so I just locked it. And what you're going to see then will be the little key over here will come up in the lower window. If you have a radio with you, feel free to turn it on and try it. Again, it's a very important feature, and I'll tell you why. If you're going out in the field, on a search, whatever it may be, and you don't have the radio locked, if you, by chance, somehow hit this middle channel button, it's going to change your frequency, or very well could change that frequency. When somebody tries calling you on the radio, or you try to call somebody else, you will not know it, but you will be on a different channel and not be able to communicate. So the best thing to do is set up your radio, make sure you're on the correct channel, whatever that channel is that you're assigned, and then lock the radio. It's really easy to unlock if you need to change something, but if it's unintentional, it's caused a lot of problems in the past. So again, this lock button is your friend. Moving on, let's talk about the dual channels now. Right now, we have only a single channel that's you're going to be able to listen to. In this case, it's CERT 4. And notice this little arrow over here, just to the left where it says CERT 4. That little arrow designates the active channel. The active channel is the one you can transmit on. So in this case, I'm going to be able to listen to CERT channel 4. I'll be able to talk on CERT channel 4. Now, if I press, and again, it has to be unlocked to make any changes to your channels. Unlock it, And if I press this, the SD button, the single or dual button, if it was only one channel showing, then you're going to get a second channel showing up down here in the bottom. But again, you're going to be able to listen to any channel that's showing up down here. You'll be able to listen to it, but you'll only be able to transmit on the active one. That's, again, the upper one right now. So how do we change the active channel? You hit this AB switch. You do that. Notice that the little arrow now moved down to CERT channel 3. So now when you key that microphone, push on the push to talk button, you're going to be transmitting on CERT 3 instead of CERT 4. You'll still be able to listen to both CERT 3 and 4, but only transmit on CERT 3. Something I didn't show in my slide deck, let me back up a little bit here. If you have, let's say you have CERT 3 as your second channel, but over here you have it turned off. If you do click on the AB button, then CERT 4 will go away. CERT 3 then will become your active channel and will be visible. So again, you can toggle back and forth, but you'll only have the one channel showing at a time. It's another feature that you can use.
Greg, something else you might point out is the channel number over there on the right-hand side.
Right, okay, channel numbers, yeah.
Yeah, because for the people with the 15 channel radios,
Right.
they won't see the CERT 3 and CERT 4. They'll know the channel numbers.
Now we'll mention that later as we
Yeah.
go on tonight. Good point, though. Sure, thank you. All right. Any other questions about setting up the handheld radios? Let me back up for a sec. I guess let me talk about when you would want to use or monitor two channels when you only want to monitor one. If you're on a search team, you're only talking to, let's say we've had an earthquake and you've gone to your container, the zone captain is assigned 3 people to a search team. You're out there. You're only going to be talking to your zone captain at the box. So you only want to have that one frequency showing. You're only going to be listening to that one frequency. And you're going to hear from your zone captain. The zone captain is kind of in the middle. The zone captain will be taking any reports that you in the field send in. If it's something that the EOC needs to know about, the incident commander needs to know about, then he will be transmitting on a different frequency. So the zone captain is going to have to be moving back and forth between channels, be listening on both, but can only transmit on one. If he wants to, let's say we're going to use CERT 4 to get to the incident commander or the EOC, then he or she will make CERT 4 the active channel and pass that information on. If the zone captain wants to talk to the folks in the field, then you're going to have to hit that AB switch, change it to CERT channel 3 and transmit it on CERT channel 3 so the search teams can be contacted. So it's back and forth for that person. One disadvantage with this particular radio, again, because if you have it set up this way, you can hear both channels, but unless you know the voices or somebody tells you which channel they're transmitting on, you don't know who's talking. I'll come to that again later and mention that a second time.
Greg, there's a chat message here from Stan Cook. He says, my radio has the green SD button, but it is labeled TDR. it still seems to function the same as Greg described. I believe he's probably got the the UB6
Yeah.
that has the touchtone keypad on the bottom below the menu.
Mhm.
And so the buttons will be arranged a little bit different. There should be an AB and an SD as well as the TDR button, I believe.
No, it's you want to use the TDR button, the green button is the one that you'll use.
Okay.
I've got one radio like that too. Anything else, Sherm?
Let's see. This is from Martin. It says, what is the recommended default settings for your radio when going out on a CERT call?
What we are saying right now is if you can leave your radio in the charger, those are smart chargers, so it's not going to hurt to leave them charging all the time. Turn your radio on and leave it on CERT channel 4. If we do have a call out right now, our Everbridge system is having some problems. So if we do have a call out, that's going to be one of the main ways we can do it right now is using CERT channel 4. So leave it on, leave it in the charger on, leave it on CERT channel 4. But again, as I think Sarah asked earlier, if you're going out on an assignment, whoever is assigning you to that role is the one that should be telling you what frequency or what channel you should be on. And then again, before you head out, whoever's in charge of radios and communications for your group, make sure you check in with whoever's dispatched you, make sure you're on the right channel and you have good communications. Anything else, Sherm?
No, not at this time.
Okay. And let's just kind of finish up. One thing we've run into problems with, and especially with the repeater now, you have to let these things sync up a little bit. If you key the mic and start talking immediately, the first few words that you say are going to be cut off. So what you're going to do is get something like this. One, this is command. One, what? Is this Old Town Team 1 or Carmel Team 1, or who is it that you're trying to call? So you must wait a second or two before you start talking. Otherwise, this is what you're going to run into. That's one thing to think about. Okay, back to what Sherm was saying. Especially when assigning MERS channels, use the channel number. These MERS channels, we've got two different banks of them. The ones we're going to be using mainly will be on channels 11 through 15. So if you want your team to go to MERS 3, then say change to channel 13. And that goes back to the radios then that Lee, some of the older radios that have the 16 channel knob on them. If you say channel 13, then they know exactly what that is. So it's a good practice to do that anytime you are changing channels. Foothill Team 4, switch to channel 14, which is MERS 4, something like that if you want, but definitely try and get the channel number in there so everyone knows what's going on. The last point I wanted to bring up was sort of what we talked about earlier. If you are monitoring two channels, and you're having trouble getting somebody to, or you're not sure exactly who you're talking with or communicating with, then ask them to let you know what channel they're on. Old Town Command, this is Old Town on channel 12. So now you know which channel they're on. So if you need to reply to them, you will reply on channel 12. So it's good practice to get into. We learned that, I think, on the drill, the seashore drill that we were doing, the spotting drill. So we had a little problem with some communication, but something like that will help as well. That's really all I have at this point. Are there any other questions on anything we've covered or in general on radio use? either text or unmute and,
Nothing on the chat right now.
okay.
This is
Oh.
Talitha. I have a question. I have the one that says TDR instead of SD. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Same or is that different?
I don't know exactly what TDR stands for, but it should do the same thing. That green button will switch between a single and double channels that you can listen to.
Okay, it still says pro. So yeah, I think I've been using it that way. So I just wasn't sure. Okay.
Right. I
Okay,
think some
Mark,
of the, I'm sorry, some of the older ones, I think came with that TD. That was an old style and they finally switched over to SD for the
Okay.
newer models.
okay, Martin made another reply on the chat. He said, should I automatically use my extended range, longer antenna with my radio? Seems like it works best in Skyline Forest.
Yes, definitely. That'll give you a
Okay.
much better range, especially when you're transmitting.
Okay, and we got a thank you, Greg and Sherman.
Thank you for attending.
Okay,
Anything else that people have questions on?
Greg, this is Jim.
Jim, go.
Yeah, one of the issues strikes me is if we had a major disaster, an earthquake or something, we'd all jump on our radios and everyone would be on channel 4 to start. And I can see that as a gigantic goat rope. Is there some advantage to each of the neighborhoods having a pre-selected merge channel we'll move to initially if we can't, if everybody's on the radio?
We don't have anything like that set up at this time. Again, if we have a major earthquake, what you're going to want to do is monitor channel 4, but not necessarily be talking on it. You'll be getting advice, direction on channel 4. When you do get to your container or wherever it is we're assigned to go, then you'll have face-to-face communication and be told what channel to be on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
okay, we got another message from Stan Cook. He says, are our radios already set up to work with the repeater? And I think I can help respond on that. We went through about a month ago and requested everybody bring their radios in to have them reprogrammed. And we went around to all of the containers and reprogrammed all of the radios in the containers.
Oh.
So
Yeah, there may be a few of them that we still have to get the new antennas on and get the repeater programmed in, but we're very close to having everything done, if not done.
let's see, got another message from Thor. There are assignments of CERT channels 1 and 2 to the various Monterey neighborhood. Let's see, Stan says, I did not bring my radio to get it set up. We can arrange to meet with you and have that done.
Yeah, contact me or Sherm or Thor,
Right.
one of us, we can get you set up.
Althea made a comment. This is not about radios, but I did not get the invite for the meeting. Checked my spam, not there. Should I contact Demi about this? Wanda forwarded me the link.
I think Dean's on and he can let you know what he
Yes,
wants to
just
do.
send an email to training at, the usual email, training at Monterey, CERT.org. The invite should have gone out to everybody, but, we may not have your exact email address. If you're getting the newsletters, we have it. So I don't know what the problem was, but yeah, send another email and to confirm what your address is. And I'll make sure that the database is correct for you,
Thank you.
Aletha.
Thank you.
Greg, this is Evelyn.
Mhm.
You mentioned something about a light that you could turn on top of the radio.
Mhm.
How would you use that? What's the use?
Whatever you want. Here's the radio. Let's see, I've got it on. It's getting a little dark in here. But again, all I do is it's on the top of the radio. If I push it,
Oh, that's pretty strong.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little LED light. Turn it off.
Makes a flashlight.
Yeah, it's just a flashlight,
Great.
little white flashlight.
I don't have my radio yet, so I didn't know. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Other questions? Okay, Deemy, anything from you?
No, Greg, a great presentation. I'm sure it was quite informative. Just, you know, in reference to if we get a big one, what we typically are going to try to do is if something major hits, we'll do a roll call by area. In other words, is there anybody in Old Town with something to report? Is there anybody in Skyline with something to report? If you have a major thing to report, get on your radio and say, break, I have emergency traffic, such as if you have a working structure fire, or you know of a situation where there's an entrapment of people. Say, get on the radio, say, break, emergency traffic, hold your traffic, and then make your report. But in the event of a major incident, we'll do a roll call, and we'll continually do the roll calls till CERT gets up and running if we have a major event such as an earthquake or some other unexpected situation.
So there shouldn't be a lot of traffic on Channel 4.
Yeah, I would hope not, but
All right, if there are no other questions, no other comments, I think we'll call this one quits for the evening.